Hi, my name is Jennifer Ramon, and this is my application for Broadway Spotted Summer Internship Program. So let's get started. As I mentioned, my name is Jennifer Ramon. I am 20 years old. I'm from Lavernia, Texas, which I'm sure you've heard of. It's actually a small town located in central Texas, but I currently attend college at the University of Texas at Austin. I'm really excited because I'll be living in New York this summer, where I have a part-time internship, so I'm looking for another place to spend the rest of my summer, and I would absolutely love to at Broadway Spotted. So question number 2. What is your favorite musical of all time? You're right. That's the hardest question anyone could ask. So I'm really glad you gave me 3 options. Number 1, I've gone with Spring Awakening. This show, I felt like after I saw it, really set the bar for everything that I've seen since. I think that it takes you to an emotional depth that a lot of shows don't. I love the juxtaposition of turn of the century clothing with current rock music, but I think that the themes are so resonant in society 200 years ago and also society today. We're still talking about abortion, pregnancy, suicide. So I think that's what really attracts me to this show. It also has some great music. I think that it's really challenging for the cast. You have to have that emotional intensity as well as an amazing voice. I have subdivided playlists, I must admit. I have mellow Spring Awakening songs and happy Spring Awakening songs. I listen to this all the time, and who doesn't love Leah Michelle and Jonathan Groff to start their day? So, love Spring Awakening. Show number 2, I went with Avenue Q. I also listen to the soundtrack like constantly. What I like about Avenue Q is that I think it really pushed theater in a new direction, but I also think it's really accessible at the same time. I think it opened the door for Book of Mormon. It really takes Broadway to a new comedic place. I think it also poses some really funny questions, like, what do you do with a BA in English? It's a hilarious show that I would recommend to anyone. Show number 3, I went with Porgy and Bess. This show, I had the fortune of seeing the revival last spring break, and I was really excited when it won the Tony Award for Best Revival. However, I was still crying inside because Audra McDonald was sick whenever I saw it. That was one of the saddest moments of my life. But I was introduced to Norm Lewis, who was phenomenal. He was great. Getting to see his performance live, that show was emotionally exhausting. By the end of it, I was drained, which is how I want to feel when I'm leaving a show. I am a classical singer, so I greatly appreciate all the singing challenges that are in the show. But like Spring Awakening, I also think that the themes are so relevant to today's society. I could not believe how long ago it was written when I saw it, because I just felt like it was so, once again, like Spring Awakening, resonant to today's society. So, the ending, probably like the most depressing thing I've ever seen. But what a fabulous show. Though that was really hard to answer question number 2, but I made it. So on to question number 3. Why do you want to work in the theater industry, and what is my goal in the long run? Well, I would really love to work in the theater industry because of the opportunity to contribute to this living, breathing art form. So many of us find our safe place in theater, or feel that this is the only place where we belong, and so the idea to contribute to it in a professional manner means so much to me. In the long run, I currently work at a performing arts center located on the campus of the university that I attend. I've worked there since my freshman year, and I've gotten a lot of really great experience in arts administration. So I would like to continue working in that area. I have a lot of fundraising. I've worked in educational capacities and fundraising capacities, so I'd really like to potentially coordinate educational opportunities for theaters or performing arts centers, I think that it's really important to invest your resources into the community because you are creating a future generation of performers and audience members. So if you don't have those educational programs, you're potentially risking the loss of this art form. So I would love to do something like that. Um, also, I could see myself working in a fundraising capacity. I have learned a lot about fundraising for nonprofits, and a lot of theaters are nonprofits, and I realize the importance of funding, of the importance and how difficult it is to get funding. So I could also see myself working in that just because I have such a passion for keeping this alive. So question number 4, what got me into Broadway slash theater? Well, when I was 7 years old, I was singing in basically a show choir. My parents were really awesome and would drive me 40 miles to San Antonio from my small town and 40 miles back every weekend to participate in a show choir. And the people at the show choir suggested I try out for a musical. The musical was Evita. I was in one scene, but it completely launched my desire to be a part of theater or attend theater events, have theater in my life for the rest of my life. Um, that was kind of the time when I realized how alive you can feel when performing or even when watching a show. I watched the entire first act every single night because I wasn't in the first act, and then I would go backstage for the second act. And I love that show, and that was really where I think I kind of got the bug, as they say. Since then, I performed all throughout my childhood. I chose not to major in theater, which was a really hard decision, but I felt like majoring in theater could potentially damage my love of theater, which is why I went with music education instead. Number 5, do you have any previous experience in the industry, or why would you make a great intern? Well, I mentioned earlier that I work at the Performing Arts Center on my campus at the University of Texas, and I have since day one of my freshman year. I'm currently a junior, so I'm about to finish 3 years of work there. And I started as a receptionist. Basically, I applied for this position because I knew they hosted the Broadway Across America season, and I thought, how cool would it be to work where Broadway Across America brings tours? Like, how awesome would it be to work around theater? So that's what initially brought me to this position, and since then I've just wanted to learn as much about this industry as possible. I didn't realize there were actually jobs in that weren't performing or teaching around theater. So I moved into an educational department for one semester where I got to help out with coordinating education programs, master classes, community events, that type of thing. And then now I work in the fundraising department and have for almost an entire year, where I've learned so much about fundraising for nonprofits. So that's basically my experience in the industry. Why would I make a great intern? Well, from this experience for the past 3 years, I've learned a lot of skills that are applicable in really any professional situation. I've learned how to multitask, balance projects. I've learned how to communicate professionally and efficiently. Um, so I think that, coupled with my enthusiasm for this industry, would make me a great intern. Living in Texas, I've never really been surrounded by people that reference musical theater, every 5 minutes of their life, which I definitely do. So I think working in an office like Broadway Spotted, where people would know what I'm talking about and would get my references, would be wonderful. To feel like, oh, these people know what I'm saying. Ugh, that would be awesome. So, question number 6. Can you use basic computer programs like Word and Excel, or can you use more difficult programs like Photoshop? Well, in the past 3 years, I've definitely had to do a lot of work in Word and Excel. I can do more advanced things like mail merges in Excel. I've used it to maintain budgets. I've used it as its own database when I worked at a camp. So I've done a lot of work in Excel and Word. I have not done anything in Photoshop, but if you need me to learn Photoshop, I will become a Photoshop wizard. I've also worked in quite a few other computer programs. I've had to learn how to work a ticketing system, and I've had to work in a donor management system. So I have learned quite a few computer programs, and I've had to learn them quickly. So I think learning new computer programs and software uh, is a skill that I possess. I've also had to send a lot of e-blasts, so I'm familiar with mass emailing systems. How do you deal with authority figures, and do you take constructive criticism well? Well, I have worked under several different supervisors, so I think I can adapt quickly to really any type of authority figure because all of my supervisors have been very different. Do I handle constructive criticism well? I believe I do. I prefer when constructive criticism comes sooner rather than later because I don't want to be doing something incorrectly. I don't want to look like an idiot, and I realize that constructive criticism really is going to make me a better employee. So please give me constructive criticism. I definitely welcome it. If you want to say, "Oh, nice shoes," before you give me some constructive criticism, wouldn't mind that. But I think I do handle constructive criticism well. Question number 8. What do you like around celebrities? Do you fangirl? And you mentioned someone getting to interview Audra McDonald for her first interview. Oh my gosh. Well, I have had the opportunity, as I mentioned, there's a lot of Broadway casts. There's a lot of Broadway tours, probably about 4 or 5 a year. So those casts typically walk around the Performing Arts Center, and I see them, and I've had to answer questions like, "Oh, where's the bathroom?" And then I am calmly like, "Oh, over there." And then I fangirl, the second they walk into the bathroom. And I have a feeling it would be similar if I was interviewing someone. I would totally hold it together around them. Before and after, there would definitely be some fangirl moments. But in person, I don't want to look dumb, first of all. Second of all, I'm not going to represent you badly. So I would definitely hold it together and try to act as normal as possible, even though that's like the highlight of my life. Okay, number 9. How often do you see shows, whether in the city or regionally? Well, this is obviously difficult considering I live in Texas, so I don't always get to see the most recent shows. I, like anyone that's into musical theater, am addicted to the Tony Awards, totally have like a countdown every single year. I don't get to see a lot of the newer shows, at least not until they start going on tour. But as I mentioned, I work at a performing arts center that hosts the Broadway Across America season, so I see about 5 Broadway tours a year, which is awesome. I've gotten to see, like last week I just saw $1 Million Quartet. I've seen Wicked 3 times. I've seen Lion King, Jersey Boy. I mean, I've seen pretty much, if it's been touring for a couple of years, I've probably seen it. I have seen quite a few shows that way. I also frequent community theaters all the time. I'm always looking to see a show. I am very fortunate that the community theaters around here like to do newer theater, which is how I've gotten to see Next to Normal, Avenue Q, Spring Awakening, shows that when they toured didn't really come here. So I'm very fortunate to have those theaters. I try to see shows. I probably see a show like once a month. Maybe not a professional show, but some type of show probably at least once or twice a month. I've been to New York 4 times, 2 times in the past year, and when I'm in New York, I'm definitely trying to see a show like every night, as many as possible. Okay, so favorite performers. Well, I study classical singing, so anyone that can sing both classically and Broadway, I completely idolize. I love Kristen Chenoweth and Audra McDonald for these reasons. They graduated from Manhattan School of Music and Juilliard. Amazing classical singers as well as musical theater performers. It's amazing to me that they can do both and be so versatile. So I idolize them. I love them so much. Still sad, but I didn't get to see Audra McDonald. but it's okay. Life goes on. Um, in addition, I love Idina Menzel. How could you not love her? To be involved, originating roles in Rent and Wicked, that, like, what kind of career is that? Amazing. Um, so I also I love her. Anyway, so other performers I love, as I mentioned, I love Norm Lewis. Was totally taken by him, and charmed by him whenever I saw him perform. What amazing emotional intensity he brought to Porky. And Aaron Tveit, one of my favorite performers. Plus, he was on Gossip Girl. You can't beat that. In addition, he originated a role in Next to Normal, which is a great show. Loved listening to his soundtrack. I think he has one of the best voices ever. Plus, he was in the movie of Les Mis, and as I said, he was on Gossip Girl. So basically, Broadway Gossip Girl. My favorite things combined into Aaron Tveit, who's also really attractive. Not basically like one of my favorite male performers. I think he has a wonderful voice. Okay, so number 11. What is your favorite thing about Broadway Spotted or BroadwaySpotted.com, and what do you have to check every week? Well, I love the weekly roundup with David Singletary. It gives me all the information I need in one enthusiastic video. I really like that feature. I also love how much the Twitter account is updated. Every time I get on Twitter, I'm getting more news about Broadway. It's great. So, I love the site as a whole. As I mentioned, living in Texas, I don't have that many sources of information. I completely rely on websites like Broadway Spotted, and especially Broadway Spotted, to get me information. So, I really am a huge fan of the website. I've probably been following for definitely over a year and a half-ish. So I love the interviews and the inside scoop. Definitely love reading and reviews, because I'm really curious, since I'll never see a show living in Texas. Some of them I'll never see because they closed before I could even get to New York, or they just don't tour. So I'm very appreciative of the reviews and interviews. Okay, next question. So and here's where I get to talk about myself. And what am I studying in school? What makes me unique, and what is totally boring about me? Well, I'm from a small town, as I mentioned. I'm probably like a walking cliche of small town girl wanting to go to New York and exist in a theater bubble. I study music education, which it was a big deal to not major in theater for me, because musical theater is definitely my greatest passion. But as I said, I was afraid of ending up not liking theater or not having the same passion if I really studied it. So what makes me unique is that I'm actually applying for this, and I'm not a theater major. I'm totally boring because I basically have the same interests as my 50-year-old parents. I would love to go to a show every single night of the week and not do like regular 20-year-old things. I am also really into classical music, jazz, dance companies. I love any kind of performing arts, really. So if I could go to a show every night for the rest of my life, I would be so happy. And do I have a hidden talent? Well, usually I would say my hidden talent is singing, but I don't think that stands out in this crowd. But I guess that is my hidden talent. So that answers all of the questions, and I'd like to thank you for your time, and I hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.